Okay, hello, Professor, and hello to every teaching assistant. I have to say sorry first because I can only use screen recording this app as my video presentations because I'm the only one in this group and I don't have another device to record myself. And meanwhile, I download many apps like Discord and the Google Meet, but none of them can let me filming myself meanwhile having my own voices. I cannot having my face and my Google slide at the same time, and especially having voice. So the only way I can think about is to record myself through the screen recording. Okay, I'm gonna. Oh, the reason I open the camera is because I'm gonna show you because later you're gonna only see the slides. So I'm gonna show you. This is my final presentation in person. Okay. So right now, let's go to the first topic. It's about the Trump administrations. They announced a series of tariffs, as a reciprocal. So all these reciprocal tariffs are nearly imposed in every country. And in Taiwan, we receive a reciprocal tariff initially set at 32%, but now it's reduced to 10% for a 90 days probationary period. So let's gonna see questions about it. So what is tariff and what is a reciprocal tariff? So we're gonna talk about what is tariff. So a tariff is simply put in the tax levied on and imported goods. So there are two types. The one is about a unit. When a unit, we put a specific tariff as a tax levied on its unit itself, each unit, and it's a fixed charge. Like I impose 300 US dollar per ton on all the imported steel. So every ton will be 300. It's a fixed charge. And another one is ad valorem. And ad valorem tariff is levied as a proportion of its value. So when you have $100 steel, then you have to give, like I say, if I impose 20% tariff, when you exported $100 steel to me, you have to pay me $20 for the tariff. So you can see the tariff it can generate money from the government, from the importers, and from government can use tariff to generate revenue by those exporters who wants to export to United States, to not just United States, but United States is the oldest country and they have these traditions to impose tariff on other countries, and they doing this historically all the time in order to raise revenue. Like in 789, they already have a law about how to impose tariff to another country. And I think it's about their economic structures. They can do it to many countries, and they have a good market, so they are able to sustain the tariff, the influence, the impact of tariff. So what is tariff? Like I said, the tariff is a tax imposed by a government on its imported goods, and tariff could generating revenue, influencing trade balance. Trade balance is what Trump cares the most. And Trump cares about the reciprocal tariff. What is reciprocal tariff? And it refers to a trade policy where the country they impose this tariff is to promote fair trade. The intention is about ensuring the the multi-levels between each trading partners to make it fair. Now let's move on to the next question. So, how will this reciprocal tariff directly affect Taiwan's exported to United States, and in contrary, how they affect Taiwan's import from United States? So, in this case, we can see that the import on Taiwan's export to United States will increase the cost because US will raise the cost of Taiwanese goods. It will raise, not US will raise, it will raise because we've been putting on tariffs. So our goods will be more expensive than before, and will be more expensive in the American market. So many buyers, they might just don't going to buy it. Our goods will be less competitive compared to other domestic products or some goods imported from another country. So when United States impose the tariff to us, it somehow also reduce the demand. The higher price may lead to decreased demand for Taiwanese export in the United States. So it will potentially resulting in a decline in Taiwan's export volumes. Maybe. It depends on who has more elasticity. Okay, so the impact on Taiwan's imports from the United States. But this one, I think, it's a question mark because maybe it's not going to happen. Like the first one is Taiwan might have a retaliatory measures, like a retaliatory tariff, and it's not likely to happen because we're not a market which is strong enough to against the biggest economy, So we don't do that. We will not implement a reciprocal tariff on American goods. Maybe in the past, but not now. So, the impact on our imports might have higher import prices, but this is still based on the retaliatory measurements. So I don't think this will gonna happen. So let's move on to the next one. The overall trade impact when they impose tariff on us. The mutual imposition tariffs can lead to a decrease in bilateral trade volumes. You at me, I at you, impose each other. Everything become more expensive. Then the trade orders, international trading orders, will be more vulnerable and have more uncertainty in the market. Eventually, the economy cares very much about the stable orders and the predictable pattern. So this next question is about what is a nominal exchange rate and how well it's affected by the reciprocal tariff. So now, the nominal exchange rate E is defined as the number of units of the domestic currency that can purchase a unit of a foreign currency. So in this definition, we can see an increase in this variable term nominal appreciation of the currency. So in contrast, an increase also means a nominal depreciation of its currency. So we have now know the nominal exchange rate. Now we're gonna talk about the real exchange rate. Real exchange rate is defined as a ratio of the price level and the domestic price level the ratio of the price level abroad and the domestic price level. So real exchange rate is about the value of the price of, and no, it's about the price level, and the nominal exchange rate is about the number of the currency. Okay, next question. So how will nominal exchange rate affected by reciprocal tariff? So when tariff reduce United States demands for Taiwanese exports, it will cause less demand for Taiwanese dollar. And when they have less demand for Taiwanese dollar, that also means less United States dollar comes to exchange for Taiwanese dollar. So the supply of the United States US dollar will decrease. So you can see here I draw the decrease in the supply, and I think it's the majority factor of all the influences. And how will the nominal exchange rate be affected by the reciprocal tariff? I'm gonna talk about the demand later. Now we focus on the supply. The U.S. supply imposes tariff on Taiwanese goods that will make Taiwanese exports fall decreases. And American, well, they don't need to exchange so many US dollar to Taiwanese dollar to buy Taiwanese goods. The demand for new Taiwanese dollar decreases means the supply of United States dollar decreases. Demand for Taiwanese dollar decreases means the supply of US dollar decreases. So now we're sure about the supply of US dollar decreases. The supply will shift leftward. It is not just about the Americans. Also the Taiwanese manufacturers exported less because they don't buy us more. So we exported less, then we receive less US dollar. So we don't need to exchange so many US dollar for Taiwanese dollar as well. That will also cause the supply of the US dollars decreases. So if the supply for US dollar decreases, what will happen to the demand for the US dollars in this exchange market? Taiwanese might buy less United States goods because when we have, if we retaliate the tariffs to them, then they might fight back. Like China and United States, they keep adding the tariff, and that will cause the overall trading amount volume will decreases. But that's is not likely the case in Taiwan. Taiwan will buy. Taiwanese investor, they might buy less. I think that this one is the majority factors contribute to the demand for US dollars decreases, because when United States imposing tariffs to all the countries, the whole world will having less credit about the United States when they not trust the United States policy like before, and it might resort to all the buyers who want to buy US dollars, and so that might cause the demand for US dollars shift leftward. But it is absolutely not going to be as much as the supply of US dollar decreases. When we just talk about the bilateral relationship between Taiwan and the United States, I'm not very sure about the whole world, because the whole world, they have so many factors need to consider about. So my point is about both demand and supply will shift leftward. So now, if both shifted leftward, what is the case? Because they all shift leftward. What is the exchange rate? And in this case, we have to see whether the first one, decreases in the US dollar supply larger than decreases in the United States demand, which is more larger. If the decreases in the United States supply larger, then there will be a rise in exchange rate. So it will cause depreciation of Taiwan dollar. And if the decrease in United States dollar demand larger than the decrease in United States dollar supply, it will decrease the exchange rate and making appreciation of Taiwan dollar, new Taiwan dollar. But, I assumed that the supply, which is us, the supply side will have more influence first because the buyer could decide whether they are going to buy or not. So we will first face maybe the decrease in our export immediately in the short term. So if in the short term we can ensure that the decrease in US dollar supply will be more in decreasing US dollar demand. So I think this one is the case. Taiwanese dollar might have a depreciation because we don't have that much power to influence the US dollar's demand. Whole world is buying its demand. But from the real world experience, it's like now it seems like US dollar is depreciate, right? Because all countries they have so many factors and combined together they lose the credit of United States maybe, that make people more aware and try to make money going to the more stable currency. But when we just talk about the bilateral relationship, there will be a rise in exchange rate because the decrease in US dollar supply is larger than the decrease in United States dollar demand in the Taipei exchange market. Okay, so we can see here the supply shifting more than the demand shifting. So the demand is shifting less. So it will cause the exchange rate up to rise and cause the depreciation in the Taiwan dollar. Next question is, how will this reciprocal tariff directly affect next export? And this tariff will reduce United States import from Taiwan, of course. No, sorry. Reduce United States imports from Taiwan. So we make less money than the past when we have business with the United States because they put a tariff on us. So they will buy less from us, so we'll export it less. So this tariff will make the United States reduce its own imports from Taiwan less. So that's correct. So the net export might increase. But however, Taiwan might retaliate by imposing tariff on US. But this is not going to happen likely. So we're not really gonna discuss more about it because this case is not realistic. So theoretically, we're not very sure about it's ambiguous because you're not sure whether which one will influence more, whether it's reduce United States import from Taiwan or the United States export to Taiwan decline, which is more. But in the real cases, this one is if the drop in imports larger than the drop in exports, the next export will increase. This one is correct because we're still buying things from the United States. We wouldn't put a tariff, retaliate back. So, but our export to United States might decreases more. That means their imports from us will be less, and their export to us will comparatively more than the past. That will make the United States next export increases. So this one is more of the real life, more accurate in real life. Okay, next question. So how will this reciprocal tariff directly affect the United States next export? And in the policy assumption that Trump, they believe that the tariffs will reduce imports and will make their exports increases, the GDP will increase as well. But in the economy reality, the retaliations might lower export as well. Of course, people will not just like to take their advantage, but Trump believes that the United States is the one who giving advantage for decades. So this is still not that sure. We're not sure about whether it's going to happen because who is stronger? We're still finding out yet. But for now, the United States is still the strongest country, so they have more elastic to leverage other country. The next one is what is the real exchange rate? How will it be affected by the reciprocal tariff? And the real exchange rate is defined as the nominal exchange rate times domestic price level divided by foreign price level. So it means it measures the relative price of domestic and the foreign goods. So how will it affect by reciprocal tariff? And we can see here the impact. If the United States imposes tariff on Taiwanese goods, then United States imports from Taiwan will fall because our exports is undertaking damage by the tariff. And Taiwan may retaliate. This is not going to happen. This is likely if we are if we are strong as well, a country who have the same power, same leverage to each other, then retaliate is our one option, but this is not the case here now. So in the foreign exchange markets, the demand for US dollars might fall. The supply of US dollar will fall. This is, I have to say sorry because this is maybe shifting to here. The supply of US dollar will fall, of course, because that is what they wanted. They don't want too much supply of their country. They want to do something. They want to reverse back. They want to reverse by don't wanting the international system, all other countries having too much US dollar. And so we are sure now that the demand will decreases, but we're not that sure about how much supply of United States dollar will decreases because there are too many factors. So if the demand falls more than supply, the US dollar will depreciate. You can see the potential supply blue line I draw here because I think that the supply is not stable because there are too many factors now. But what I know is that it might be more than the supply decreases, more than the demand decreases of US dollar. So if the nominal exchange rate falls, which means every country they can buy more US dollars. That means the United States dollar have a depreciation. Meanwhile, the price level remains stable, then the United States goods will become relatively more competitive and more cheaper. That is what they wanted. They want their manufacturing industry could be rise again. So what I say here is that the net effect is ambiguous, but I think it's theoretically. But I think the United States dollar will have a depreciation, maybe. And next question. So, based on our analysis, will Trump meet his expectations about the trade balance? So, the U.S. next exports, he wanted to be more. He wanted the trade could be fair. So, but in reality, even if the imports fall, the exports might still likely to fall. The net exports might not increase. So in this case, we can see reduce in the foreign exchange markets. We can see a reduced capital inflow. Well, because the US dollar depreciation, because they are losing the credit. So a weaker dollar, in Trump's idea, a weaker dollar could boost export. But it's only happen if the foreign demand is elastic enough. And it's not and they don't have impulse retaliate tariff back. That is the case when this happens. So he will miss his expectation. But the Europe, the China, and many countries, they are considering about fighting back in the retaliate tariff. I'm not very sure, but I don't think he will meet his wishes that soon. There were still many challenges, and he's changing now. So, but the United States, they do have the potential to do that. That is not impossible. That is somehow possible because he's stronger, and United States have more power to leverage other country, bilaterally. So now I'll move to the next topic. We have a significant increase in Taiwan recently, especially in the AI industry. So our semiconductor exports rise a lot to the United States in 2024. NVIDIA and AMD, they both announced to establish overseas headquarters and R&D centers in Taiwan. So some people will have, this topic is talking about portfolio investment and foreign direct investment. So let's talk about this. How would it increase Taiwan's real GDP and over price level in short run? So how would they increase? So when Taiwan's semiconductors export increase, is when it increase, the aggregate demand increase and shift rightward, and it will making because the aggregate demand is the entire the whole factor of all the economic growth. So the consumer investment, government spending, all will increases and net export, and they will make the real GDP increases. So in this case, the overall price level will of course increases. So increases aggregate demand, increases in GDP, increases in price. You will have maybe some inflation. So the next one is we have to figure out what kind of investment NVIDIA and AMD is. So they're gonna have build the R&D centers, which means they will have the constructions new employees, factories, establishing locations. So they are not just buying stocks, they are the real capital, the real physical capital. So in this case, it's a very classical foreign direct investment. And in the short run, this raise aggregate demands and increase investment spending. So, of course, like the last graph, increase in real GDP and rise in overall price level. Aggregate demand, of course, shifted rightward. Next one. So how will this affect the aggregate demand increases? Well, mainly well result in the FDI increases. The aggregate demand will shift right because the construction, equipment, purchase, investment, all of these things about the economic growth all increases. So aggregate demand shifted right. And it will make the real GDP shifted right too. And the price level, of course, will rise. And you can see that because the short run aggregate supply is upward, the aggregate demand shift rightward will lead to price increases. So overall, all things are increasing. That's why people like the foreign direct investment. So now another question. So many investors from abroad, they buy the TSMC shares. So we're gonna figure out what kind of investment it is. So unlikely foreign direct investment, when you just buy shares, it doesn't bring any physical productions, resources, or equipment. It's just the money in is money out. So just the money comes in, and the money will circulate in money, not going to touch the real world, maybe. So it's a very classic, typical portfolio investment, and it does not involve any physical capital construction. So it only represents the inflow. Money comes in from the foreign funds into the financial markets, like our stock and bonds. And to expect this type of investment directly affect Taiwan's aggregate demand in short run? Yes, I still have positive ideas about it, because when the stock prices rises, people will have more faith on the entire economic predictions, future of something, will be more confident. So when it rises, Taiwanese locals investor will feel more wealthy, and this will cause the wealth effect. The wealth effect will make entire generations in Taiwan, the entire people, households, family, we will be more willing to spend more money in consuming. And consuming is the fundamental source of the demand. So the aggregate demand will rise slightly because you're not sure how much connected to it. It's not indirect. So compared to the exported growth or foreign direct investment, this kind of contribution of the aggregate demand is usually smaller and less stable because the money can come in, it can come out easily. It's not the physical capital. So the next question, how about the impact on the overall price level in the short run in Taiwan's real GDP? So an impact on the real GDP, because of the limited increase in the aggregate demand, real GDP might rise slightly. It's still the money, and they make us more confident. So they will might be making the society's economic activity more prosperous, so it might be expand, but not that much because it was not based on the real economy, the real industry, the real stuff. So the price level might slightly rises, but it's unlikely to cause significant inflation pressure. But I wouldn't agree 100% of this, because if we are more a smaller country and our main industry is about finance and banking, like Ireland, like I don't know, but if we are that kind of country, then this portfolio investment will surely have significant inflation pressure to the economy. Okay, now next questions. How about if Taiwan government takes no actions in response to those AI industry? What will happen in the long run? Wait, okay. If the Taiwanese government takes no actions in response to all this, then in the short run, because of this booming industry, it might grow very fast. The entire aggregate demand will rises, and it will still rising, and what matters is about how fast it is and how the structure, whether the structure is healthy or not, whether it's too fast or not. So of course Taiwan real GDP will exceed potential output, will be more. It will be more. And it will, when it's happening, it might cause the overall economy overheating. But in the long run, the corporate profits increase will make the investment expansion, and the production capacity will have an improvement. And of this improvement, the production factors of technology, production, the capital, the labor, all these talents, all these resources will accumulate its advantage. It will be better. So in the long run, aggregate supplies, it shift it right. So even in the short run, we have some problems of overheating, but in the long run, the economy will return to the long-term equilibrium. How happening is like this: our GDP rises to the right. When our GDP rises to the right, it's happening because our aggregate demand rises to shifted to the right too. The shifted aggregate demand shifted to the right, and the GDP shifted to the right, the price will go up. When the price go up, everything to the right, we might have the supply, the long-term aggregate supply will need time to catch on. But it will surely eventually catch on. So in the long term, the long run aggregate supply will shift right when the labor productivity and the capital improved, and you will make the everything long term come back, returns to the equilibrium. So we can see our Y GDP was here from Y to Y1 and back to Y, maybe back because the long run aggregate supply rises and make everything return to equilibrium again. Okay, so the next questions. If our government concerned about this overheated economy, what will it do? Fiscally, in fiscal policy or in monetary policy? So in fiscal policy control, our government could have a contractionary. Okay. Hi, Professor. Sorry, my phone storage is up to its limit, so I delete something and I'm gonna record again. Now again, from where I stop. Okay, so I'm gonna go here and continue to my presentations. And we're gonna talk about how we can do to reduce the real economy going too fast to content to make the overall price level balance. In fiscal policy, there is a contractionary fiscal policy, and very easy is to reduce government spending. And when government spending reduced, you will suspend many infrastructures, construction plans, cut spending on non-essential sectors, like right now. like right now. You are left with the aggregate demands because it putting off all many demands, many things we need to reinvestment, many things we can making. Overall, it's gonna make the purpose to reduce government spending is to reduce the overall demand pressure. So when we decrease in real GDP, it also decrease the overall price level maybe, and it could stabilize the price level and make it more connected to the real economy growth. And so that when it is more connected to the real economy, it could curb the inflations and try to prevent the bubble from breaking up. The next question is about, well, we just talked about the fiscal policy. Now we're going to talk about the monetary policy. The monetary policy, there's one which is very simple as well, is to raise policy interest rate. When we raise the interest rate, our central bank raises its rate discount rates and sells its bonds to the open market and raise the reserve requirement ratio. And all this will make the market interest rise. When the market interest rise, the consumptions and the investment expenditure will deteriorate. Not deteriorate. The expenditures will not that much compared to the past because everything becomes the price, putting everything, borrowing money becomes more expensive. They will make the investment hold back, so the aggregate demands will decrease. When it decrease, it's gonna increase the capital cost and slow down the stock market and the house marketing speculation. So it will decrease in real GDP and reduce inflation pressure. But the intention of doing this is to reduce the credit expansion from getting too much further, and that's a way to prevent our asset bubble from worsening. Okay, now we're gonna move to the third topic. The third topic is about what we just talked about, the government spending decreases by our legislative yuan, because 行政院被立法院 cut their budget. And some people will argue that cutting the budget is helping Taiwanese people by saving the public money. But more others say that cut those budgets will harm the Taiwan's economy. Let's talk about it. So how will this budget cut directly influence the aggregate demand and the price level, and how it reflects to the real GDP? So let's see this one. The direct impact when the budget cuts is when the government spending decreases. It will, very sure will make the aggregate demand shifts leftwards because the government plays very important roles in the aggregate demand. Many expenditure is spending by government, and the macroeconomic effects in the short run will cause the aggregate demand significantly decreases. When it decreases, the real GDP will very likely to decrease as well. And the overall price level will decreases because but meanwhile the inflation pressure will be contained. So when we cut the government spending, decreases the budget, it will shift the aggregate demands to the left. The short run, it will lead to the decline in both GDP and price level, of course, and it will indicate a weaker economic activity and lower the inflation pressure. Why is that? We're gonna talk here. Because we just know that there is a very important concept which is called the multiplier effect. That is why it will weakening the economic activity. Let me tell you what is the multiplier effect. No, you don't need to know. You already know what I'm talking about. Okay. The multiplier effect is when it's explained how our government's initial spending and eventually leads to a very greater total increase in output. It's like economy circulations, and the circulations will amplify a lot. How? By, for example, if like we have 100 billion increases in government purchases, that means government spending 100 billion into these economic circulations into the market. And if in this case, if the multiplier, if the MPC is 0.8, that means when we, let's do a math right now, like 1 minus 0.8 means 0.2, and 1 divided by 0.2 means 5. So when we spend 100 billion, it will amplify like times 5 times, like 500 billion increases in the real GDP. So if government just spending 100 billion, the GDP will grow 500 billion. That's a lot. So many people will receive this collective of goods spreading around. So this chain reaction will transmit multi times in the economy, but so do when we trying to decrease the government budget. So now the question is, do you expect a multiplier effect to result from decrease in government spending? Yes, of course. It has so many powerful effects in the positive way. Of course, you will have the effect when you try to decrease it. So it will be expected very surely the government spending cuts will indeed produce a multiplier effect in a negative way. Like when government spending cut, it will reduce the direct demand for enterprise. In the first stage, every enterprise very related to government infrastructures, public sectors, and many government-owned corporate. All these employees from all these companies, all these sectors, all these places, their wages, their income will decreases. And that's what's going to happen in the second stage. The second stage is when they reduce their income, when they have less money. They will eventually spend less in cost of living. The consumption will drop, will decreases, and the consumption is the fundamental engine for economic growth for the entire aggregate demand. So when the consumption drops, the the company, the enterprise, the businessman, they will know, all the industry will know that the future is not secure. When the future is not secure, they will reduce spending money and reinvestment to the future because they don't know whether the money will gonna go back when they will make a profit. And this chain reactions will transmitted multiple times in the economy and gradually weaken the economy. But overall, the degree of decline in total demand will eventually larger than the amount of original government spending cuts. So when you're trying to cut something, it's going to be very impactful, times impactful than you ever imagined. Okay, so now the next question is about how will this budget directly affect the public saving and the non-labor funds markets. And we have to know the relationship between investment, private saving, and national saving. What are they going to be effective? And you can see after the government's budget cuts, the impact on public saving will reduce budget deficit. So it's not all just wrong or negative. Of course, you spending less money will save more money. And when you save more money, it will increase the public saving because you just reduce the public deficit. When the public saving increase, the saving supply curve of the loan funds of market will shift to the right. And that's very important. That means the government spend less and leaves more money into markets. And in this case, the interest rate will be affected, and so do the investment. So you can see here the supply of the non-member funds shift to rightwards. That means the market have more money. And when the market have more money, the interest rate will drop. So let's gonna see what's gonna happen in the second round. So when the budget cuts increases public saving, it will shift the non-member funds to the right, of course. And as a result, the real interest rate falls, making it cheaper for firms to borrow. The interest rate falls, the funds, money will be more in the market, and things will be more easy to borrow. And this will lead to stimulates to make the private sector, the company, they have more willing to spend in investment. And while both private and national saving, they might also rises because this circulation. And in these circulations, when trying to generalize everything, you can see that when both saving might increases, the private saving will increases, and the national saving will increases. The public saving will indeed increases, but the private saving is not 100%, but has a chance to increases because there are more money into the market because the government spend less. So it's likely to increases, very much likely. And so when all the saving is increases, the supply curve will shift to the right because the market have more money, of course, and you will make the real interest rate. No, it's not going to make an interest rate. The real interest rate may decreases because all the saving increases. The funds are more cheaper, so the interest rate will decreases. and the because private saving increases, national saving increases, and the supply curve of a low number found increase shift to the right, and the interest rate also decreases. This will make people more willing to invest. And when they invest, activity increase, the income might be increased, which also boosts more private saving. So, I'm not really familiar with this. This is just what I searched from the Google and trying to figure out all these things. I'm not really good at graphical analysis, so I'm trying to generalize everything to let it know. So I still not very know the 100% logically the whether which factor will turns to another factor. I'm still trying to learn. So that's why I write the potential outcome and the theoretical factor. Okay, the next question is based on my analysis on question 3. My analysis on question 3 is not that reliable. What will happen to Taiwan's net capital outflow? Oh, this one. I watched other people's video to figure out how to draw this diagram because I'm not really familiar with this. I'm still learning, and you can see in this diagram, in this graph, the budget cuts will make the public saving increases, so the non-number funds will increases, and when the non-number funds increases, the market have more money, and the real interest rate will decreases because the supply is very sufficient. And but in this case, when it's more sufficient, it also make the domestic assets become less attractive because they have more money, and means everything is more cheaper to buy than the past. So when domestic have more money, they will try to find a better return, better targets in order to have a more valuable return. So the foreign assets will become more attractive. That will cause the net capital outflow shifted to the right. So when low number funds more, supply more, interest dropped, everything more to the market. Market have more money, will make the money try to go out to find a better belongings, to find a better destinations. So the net capital outflow will increases. So how will the change in this affect the supply chain in New Taiwan dollars in foreign currency exchange markets? And especially how it affects Taiwan trade balance of the net export. So you can see what will be the effects of this demand. When the budget cuts, the saving increase, we repeat so many times. Budget cut, saving increase, interest rate decrease, loan number funds more, supply more, will make the money try to run away from domestic because they were too much. And when it's trying to go away, it will go to the foreign. It will go to the foreign exchange, the foreign currency exchange market. And when it goes there, it will find out, more Taiwanese dollar is coming. So the exchange rate of supply will shift rightward. The Taiwanese dollar is more, supply goes rightward more, and the real exchange rate might face depreciation because the more money is given out, that will make our money less in the foreign market less valuable, because things is more valuable when it's more rare, demand is larger than the supply. So when the supply is up, you will have a depreciation in the real exchange rate. So in this case, Taiwan, when it has a depreciation, the effect of the New Taiwan dollar will make the depreciation of the New Taiwan dollar will make the industries, especially the industry who wants to export to another country, will make their goods more cheaper and more competitive, and that will make the next export increase, maybe a lot of chance, maybe, because when the export is, because when our dollars depreciate, meanwhile will bring another problem, which means the imports goods will be more expensive. When it is more expensive, and it will, we're not sure whether the next export which one will be have a more impact. We have our export industry must be stronger than the importers, But we have been living like this for decades, right? So based on our previous analysis in question 3 and 5, let's go to see whether these budget cuts will indirectly and directly influence Taiwanese aggregate demand. So we have to summarize all these influence from the budget cuts, from the indirect to direct, from the positive way and the negative way. So let's go to the direct first. The direct is very clear, very, very clear. The government spending decrease will make the aggregate demand decreases. It's very much associated because the government spending plays a big role in aggregate demand. Sorry, my tongue is tired. And the government spending is a direct component of aggregate demand, of course. So when it dropped, the aggregate demand dropped, it will make somehow it will have more effect than we initially imagined, because we cannot forget the multiplier effect. The multiplier effect is happening when the government try to spend less or more. It will have times effect amplify. So the initial reduction in government spending will cause a decrease in income, further reductions in consumption. Like we say here, we have the first wave and the where is it? Yeah, the first stage, when it cuts the old things related to governments, the people have less income, and then when the people have less income, we'll have a second stage. When people have less income, they will cut their consumptions, and when they cut their consumptions, it's what things becoming worse, because consumption is the fundamental engine for the aggregate demand for the economic growth. So when they cut their consumption because of the reduced income, and it will make the markets more pessimistic, and it will affect the industry and business to whether they're gonna hold back, to they're not going to spend more money on spending, and especially reinvestment to the future. So that is the cause of the multiplier effect. So as a result, aggregate demands will decrease more. But when we talk about to two things which is negative. Let's talk about the indirect impact. Because when the loanable funds have more money, the interest rate will fall. Interest will fall, and the investment will increase. Because people have more money, they were more likely to investment. Because the money need to find a way to find a more valuable target, and government saving increases will make the interest rate fall again. So it will stimulate the private investment because the government leave the money to the market, and so the aggregate demand indirectly will increases. And not just that, we have to still consider about the money goes to abroad. When the money goes to abroad, because we have too much money here domestically, the foreign market will face new Taiwan dollar depreciate. When it happens, the net exports will increases, but also the net capital outflow will increases. The net export increases is not 100%, but very likely because we have a very strong export industry. So in this case, the exchange rate falls, the export become more competitive. Our goods, our much commodity become more competitive. The next export is likely to increase. So all this indirect impact might slightly cause the aggregate demands indirectly increases. Because it's too indirectly, and you're not sure whether how much it is. So when we talk about decreasing the government spending, we will firstly resorted in economic economic recession maybe, because we know the demand is being less. Demand is the engine of the economic growth, and also government plays a lot role when government have the multiplier effect. So combined together, the aggregate demand will shift more, decrease more, shift level more. But these two indirect impact might have partially the offset to balance the decline in aggregate demand. So in the short run, yes, we know the demand will decrease, but in the long run, we're still not very sure whether cutting the government budget down is good or bad. We're not very sure. But in the short run, we'll face the consequence of cutting the government budget. Okay, thanks. Thank you. Thanks, Professor. Thanks, Teacher Assistant. 谢谢老师，谢谢助教。我的报告到此结束，谢谢。